Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's July 26th. This will be our chart lesson for today. As you can see here from the daily chart, that we sold off pretty strongly today, but recovered almost half of it before the end of the day. I mean, it's typical. This market does not want to sell off. It just keeps wanting to push higher. Of course, we haven't made any new highs yet, but it's trying. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. I'd be careful trying to sell this. Of course, if the trend's going down, by all means, sell it. We had the FOMC announcement today, and while uh, it actually sent prices up at first, and then and then it took it all back plus some, and then of course after at the close, prices rallied up and then sold off a little bit, but ended up much higher. I mean, they almost took it all back. Um, right before the close, and then right before the close, it sold off a little bit. So this market just does not want to sell off. I mean, this is not much of a correction here for a very overbought market to begin with. So we'll see what happens here. But this market doesn't want to sell off, so be careful. At some point, it may turn and rocket down like shoot down like a rocket. But right now, it's not. This market does not want to sell off, so just be careful selling. But obviously, if you get a downtrend, do whatever you got to. You got to do what the market gives you. But on mixed days, be very careful. So let's flip over to the intraday chart, and we'll go through the trades. We'll take a look at it. I'll show you how I see it. And here it is. It's really just a range day. In the big scheme of things, it's a range. You can see the news here, and it rallied off the lows, broke out the top, failed instantly, turned down, rocketed straight down, fell out the bottom, turned up, rocketed up, back up to the top, and then closed slightly down from yesterday. Pretty much right in the middle of the range. So not much change at all by the end of the day. A lot of mixed trading, really. Probably the only reason we got these big moves up and down were because of the news announcement, which I blocked out. You need to be flat about an hour before FOMC news comes out, because if you don't, a lot of times, I mean, we had a little movement today, but a lot of times it'll just get in a real tight, a range smaller than this, maybe half this size, and just go sideways, and you don't want to get caught in that going into the news item. So you're better off to get out about an hour ahead of time. But let's zoom in, go through the trades, and we'll wrap this day up. All right, we started out in this downtrend. We had one leg down, then started another one, so you'd look for a possible measured move, which we see we went a little further than that slightly. But we're dropping down. We get a first entry. We close outside. We get a second entry. No setup there. And then really this looks like congestion with a failed breakout, and then a big turn down with a big bearish bar. Really, this is a double bottom, and so you could count that as a second entry. It broke higher first and then turned down. I like trading that on the engulfing bar. If not, you could still trade. If you got room to get out before these lows, you could still trade that. But just make sure you got enough room. When I say that, if you went short one tick below here, do you have enough room to scalp out before this low? You just do have 6 ticks, so it's really pushing it, and that makes this a really big bar. 17 ticks. I like entering it on the engulfing portion when it broke higher. As soon as it broke past that bar, it gives you a lot more room, a lot smaller stop, etc. It turns down, makes a couple legs down, then reverses. You can't go long out of that. And it comes up here. Notice you had a high here, and you tested it once. This is actually just slightly lower. Then you tested it twice. This did make a new high here, but it closed well within the range. So I like, since it is a first entry, second entry, I like going short there. We're not looking for second entries here, but if you get one, take it. Then you got another touch with a bearish bar. I marked this one red. It's close to being green just because it's right at the midline. But I still like that one because we made another lower high here and closed a little bit lower as well. So maybe you take that trade. Um, if you thought it was too congested or too close to the midline, I wouldn't disagree with you. Um, we bounce here with a higher low, but I don't like that. I'd want to see something else, and we're just chopping along, and finally it comes back, and suddenly you have a 1, 2, 3 triple test. This is also a first entry, then it turns down and goes back up, so it's a second entry long right off the lows. Again, we're not looking for second entries in a tight range, but if you get a setup and it happens to be a second entry that it looks like two legs, then pay attention to it. Don't trade it because it's a second entry, though. This is a triple test off the lows, big bullish bar, and you got plenty of room to get out. And this thing actually goes much higher and gives you a failed breakout. But notice there's a new low here, and you get a first entry, second entry. So it's a second entry short on a failed breakout after a break and a new high. I like that. It's green because of that new high. You might want to wait on a lower high, which never really comes. You can't trade that. And then there's a second entry here off the top, which just basically is a double top, and no setup there. It comes back a triple test, but no setup. It just keeps chopping along. I don't see anything else in here I really like, long or short, until it starts working lower here. There is a second entry short here, but the signal bar is no good. It just keeps on dropping down. There's a couple of little breaks higher here. You get a break higher a couple more times, I guess is the way I should word that, but no setups. And then we rally out of here. Looks like you get a close outside pretty quickly on this before you even confirm the trend. But then you get a quick a little higher high here, and that would be a second entry when it broke higher there. So the fact that we just came off our low and we're trending higher, I like going long there. There is some resistance there. Maybe you make that green, but I liked it in real time. If you back out of here, you figure this breakout here is going to fail. We just came off the low of the day. It's looking like it might be a range, so maybe you take that trade. It takes it a minute. The fact that you had this little inside bar, really, I probably should make that green. I've gone back and forth over it, but the more I think about it, because of that inside bar, if that bar would have broke straight higher, maybe you make that blue. But because it didn't, I think you need to make that green. It's a little bit aggressive. If your chart set up different, maybe it could be blue, but the way it sets up, I think you got to make that green. Runs on up to a new high and then it sells off. No chance to really go short here, and that takes us into the 1 o'clock. And then that takes us into the 1 o'clock news item. Sit tight till it kind of settles down. And it runs on up. Tries to go higher multiple times, but I don't see any setup really that I like to go short there. Unless you wanted to take this one, but there's a new high there. I mean, it's a possibility. Maybe you make that because you do see the break and a new high. Drops on down. Makes it really, you could count that as a double bottom and you get a first entry, second entry, but the signal bar is no good. Drops a little lower. Then you get a first entry, and then you get, this makes a equal high, but then a higher low. So when it breaks lower, that's technically a second entry right there. You may not could get in that trade, unfortunately, because it does gap over and keep going. But you could put a limit order there, and if it filled it, you'd have caught this whole trade maybe. But there's a lower high here. I marked it green. The signal bar is not perfect, but this is really close. I mean, technically, it's a first entry, and then you could call this a second entry. It's almost a failed second entry long, but it's definitely a second entry short. It's a little tougher one to see. It's not textbook, but it's there, and so that would make this a lower high. the signal bar, I'm just a little iffy about that signal bar, but this is close. You could almost call that one red. And it just takes off this time. And this is actually, I want to say I had this a little steeper. I think I originally had this drawn from here maybe. Well, maybe I didn't, but I could have sworn I had that drawn differently. It really fits well there, but it looks like a huge overshoot. If you bring it to there, it still looks like, maybe it is an overshoot, I don't know. But that looks better on the range to me with an overshoot. But it drops on down, and I marked this one, but because it tried to go higher once, twice, three times, that's a failure. You could call that a triple test, but you can see it right there. It's not a perfect signal bar, and there's not a lot of room to those lows, although we just pushed lower. So maybe you take that trade. I liked it just because it was a triple test. And notice we make a lower high each time, and the bullish close is lower each time as well. That's not a good sign for this not going lower. It is right into what looks like a low, but you might have had this drawn a little lower at the time is the thing, because of this last couple lows were lower. So you might have had more room there than what I'm showing right here. So that really would make a difference whether this was red or green. So if it's like it is now, I don't think there's room to get out. So it's a stretch to call that red the way I've got it. Well, it is just at 6 ticks. So you could still, it's close. I mean, this one's teetering on being green, but there actually is still 6 ticks there, which is all you need to scalp out. So I think we can still leave it red. And of course we break out, fail, run up, come back, test the support. It acts as support. We went up, comes back, test support again, and look at it finally go higher. So I like this as a short just because we run up and you try to go higher once, then twice. And technically this is a first entry, second entry with a big bearish bar. So if it breaks below that, you'll probably come back and test the support at a minimum, and you may get a scalp out of it. So it's a little late in the day, and so I did make it green. It's definitely a second entry short. It's definitely a nice signal bar, but it looks like we maybe had an overshoot here, and we've had a failed breakout. And we have bounced off this lows, even though we've gone lower a couple times, we've bounced off of it a few times too. So it's kind of mixed right there. So I'd mark that green. It's really late in the day too, so that makes it hard to consider that red without it being a triple test or something across there. But anyway, that's how I saw it today. Not a lot of trades today. We had a few quite early. If you traded you could have got your 2 or 3 trades in right here. Then you just had to kind of sit tight until the news. There's maybe a green one in there. That's a long time to sit tight, and it's hard. I mean, if you might even not trade on the FOMC news day if you're not really skilled and you're trying to trade live or whatever. Maybe you just skip a day like this because you can get burned easily. When you see, I'm sure people were loaded up short, and this is mostly this big huge move is all probably stopped running when all the shorts were having to exit, and new longs are coming in because the market's rallying, and that's what happens there. And then the same thing on the way down, it starts losing momentum, and then suddenly everybody's chasing the sale, and boom, and all these buyers had to get out, and they got it just taken right back from them. And it just did that a couple times today. So this market does not want to sell off for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. It doesn't want to sell off. But there it is. Not the easiest trading day. Like I said, sometimes you might consider just skipping FOMC days or wait until, trade up to about 11 o'clock and then take off and maybe come back after around 2 o'clock. But that doesn't leave you at about 30 minutes of good trading. So Maybe you just come in and trade till about 11 or 12 o'clock and go home. And you don't wait all this stuff out, and you don't have all that problem. But anyway, that's how I saw it today. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. That'll wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Fridays. But I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you had a good one. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.